have a PowerPoint. Hopefully I won't bore you to death with this. We'll get into the code hopefully pretty quick. But so I'm sure you all maybe read the overview. I think there was maybe some confusion as to what the talk was. Basically what I've had up here on the screen before I put the slideshow on was the Buildertrend Documents tab. Our customers have unlimited document storage, and they use it for all sorts of different things. And we're trying to find a way to just create a better, more native experience for them in a post-Silverlight Flash Java world. So that's kind of what I'll be talking about here. Is this thing even working? Okay. So who is this guy that's going to be talking at you for the next half hour? Like I said, my name's Rich Klasky. I've been at Buildertrend for 2.5 years now. Before that, I was at Nebraska Global and did a stint at Epic Healthcare before that. Got like 6 years on the .NET stack. Pretty much anything you can list, I have at least a little experience with. WPF, WCF, workflow, ASP.NET, obviously, MVC, all that good stuff. So that's my professional life in a nutshell, but enough about me. You guys are already bored by that. So the problem we're trying to solve is kind of the way file upload within the browser has worked forever. You know, you upload a document and then your website displays that document, and if you want to edit it, you have to download it, find that file on your file system, open it within your editor, make changes, save it, then go back to your web browser, enter into this upload control, find your file in there again, re-upload. So there's quite a few steps. People are used to it. It's fine, but it's not great. So some previous solutions, people have written Java plugins, Flash, Silverlight, to be able to kind of navigate through the file system or what have you, and maybe do some more rich editing stuff. But as most of you know, these types of things are dying pretty fast. Java is being eliminated from browsers, and Flash and Silverlight, Silverlight for sure is basically dead. And then, there's online editors as well, but those are going to have limitations as far as the file types that you can actually edit, and also the editing capabilities are usually going to be limited compared to something you can do natively in Word or Excel or something like that. And then there have been third-party storage systems that have popped up. Box specifically is one where you can actually edit with a desktop app, and it's given us kind of the seed of the idea of what we're going to be demoing here today. But it also means that you have to integrate with their system and store your files there, or in some sort of synced folder. So if you want it to be specific to your application, your cloud storage, you're kind of out of luck there. So what we've come up with is something that's great for our needs. You can click the link in the browser and choose to edit using your native tools. It'll appear to the user as if they're just navigating in, say, Windows Explorer. It basically opens Word automatically, and they're able to edit and save, and it'll sync back automatically without them having to go back to the browser and pick the file again and re-upload it. So there's quite a few steps eliminated, and it just makes for a nicer experience for the user. So before we get into the demo, I just wanted to kind of talk high level as far as what's going to be going on here. So bottom left, we have our cloud application, which is what we had today, yesterday, a year ago. It's basically the meat of our system. It's where it's going back to get the files to deliver them to the user and delivering the pages, and we're in a load balance environment, so we've got 8 app servers, for example, and obviously clients going through the browser to access that application, and we're introducing a downloadable Buildertrend Edit application to enhance their document editing experience. So if they choose to download that, then they'll have the ability to edit natively, and that application takes care of a lot of the guts of downloading, syncing back, caching, all that stuff that we'll kind of be going through in the demo. And then we've also got some SignalR stuff introduced that all of these pieces are talking to, just to kind of add some UI glitter. And if one person's editing a document, another user's in a different browser, they can see that that document's being edited. One user saves while another user is editing. The next user tries to upload, they'll get an alert saying, hey, this file's been uploaded since you've been editing, and offer them some decision points. So we're using SignalR to kind of keep all that real-time stuff in sync. And then I've got Click Once installer up there as well. That's what we're using to deliver the BT Edit application to the client machine. If you're not familiar with Click Once, it's a Microsoft technology for installation, essentially, and updates. I'll be doing a little bit of demo on that, so if you're not familiar, we get to learn a little about that, but it's worked pretty well for us, and I think it's pretty handy, pretty easy to use. So before I get into the demo, does anybody have any questions before we?
Did you use to build BT Edit, or did you build it from scratch?
We built it from scratch. It's written in C#, and we'll definitely be digging into how it works. There's JavaScript on the client-side browser, and then there's some stuff on the cloud application as well to support all of the different pieces, like the re-upload and obviously the SignalR and communicating with BT Edit. But all of it's written in-house. We collaborated with a student team down in Lincoln, so they've been helping a lot with the BT Edit side of things. But yeah, it's all basically our code.
What is the document format that you're saving? Is it transferable to other environments?
Well, essentially we're saving the same format as it was saved up to our server. So if you're editing a Word document, we're downloading it as Word, and we'll eventually encrypt it in our own format on the client when they're done editing, but basically acts as a Word file for all intents and purposes. So, anybody else? All right. So we'll go ahead and get started with a quick demo. So this is the BT or Buildertrend Documents tab. Basically, you can group your files into folders and whatever. As you navigate into folders, you see your documents. I mean, it makes sense pretty much. But so what we've added, and this feature's still pretty beta, so there's not a lot of polish, but you'll see at the top here, it says Seamless Edit not running. Click to install. So we're going to go ahead and install. Basically, this is just a link to a setup.exe that was generated using Click Once. And we go ahead and click that to install. Those of you who are familiar with Click Once will be familiar with these dialogues. This is signed by Buildertrend Solutions, so you can trust it. So we're going to go ahead and install. It'll go ahead and check the prereqs for this application in the background, and I'll show you within Visual Studio how you set all that up. But at this point, I've made sure all the prereqs are installed, so we don't have to wait for .NET to install or anything. So now you'll see that this link has changed to Seamless Edit is running without refreshing the browser. So if I want to edit a Word document, for example, we've got the two original options that we had were download and edit online. We've now added this option to edit locally. So you'll see, oh great. Let's try refreshing this here. First hiccup of the demo. It's good. Okay. There we go. So we clicked a link in the browser, and it opened our Office doc within Word. It's kind of neat. And as we edit, it will save, and it will tell us that the document has been re-uploaded successfully. So the user has no need to go back into their browser, click to choose a file, find their file within the file system, re-upload. It just happens. So when we go back to the browser, there was a little icon here. Yeah.
Your application sits between the browser and what?
Yes. Yes. So I'll show you guys how it's working. But yes, essentially, this edit locally link goes to BT Edit, the client application, which then downloads the file and opens the process that is attached to that extension on your computer.
So it opens normal Microsoft Word.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it'll open based on your preferences. So if you have OpenOffice set up for DocX, it'll open that.
So it's consistent.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Is it just watching for changes to re-upload, or is it watching for save events?
I think currently it's using like the built-in file system watcher that's built into the .NET framework. I didn't write most of this code, but yeah, it's watching on a folder for changes, and then it has the file that it's looking for, and if that file is the one that changed, then it'll re-upload. And there's some pain points there with Word and other Office docs that I'll kind of talk about as we move along here. But yeah, so I mean, you can also see that, well, I have to refresh again. Sorry, part of my demo was working earlier today, and now it's not. But if we reopen, you'll see this icon in the background, and that's Signal R telling you that the file is currently being edited by another user. So if I go into my RDP session, I'm logged in as another user in the same folder. They've got this popping up as well. So the users are able to see if someone actually has that document open. There would be a little warning about whether they'd actually want to go in. Because we get calls in support from time to time, people wondering what happened to their changes, et cetera. This is kind of a helping hand as far as that goes. So
it's not an exclusive thing?
No. And that was by design. I mean, we had discussions about locking the files. But what we tried to do is make it as transparent as possible for people to know what they're doing, but not prevent them from doing it. We haven't mastered what happens when a user walks away from their computer with the file open. So we didn't want to lock the files for that reason, essentially. Somebody leaves the file open, locked forever. But I'll show you a demo of the conflict system where two users are editing at the same time, kind of how that works as well. So that's basically the base case. And now, unless anybody else has questions, I'll go ahead and dig into the code and kind of show you how it's actually working. Cool. So if we go ahead and fire up the BT Edit solution here, you'll see I got some breakpoints already. One of the first things it does when it starts up is it fires up this HTTP listener class. So this is built in to .NET, and it's essentially just listening for HTTP requests. And on the client over here, if I refresh the page, which I will do in a second here. You'll see that a request is made here, and in the network tab to localhost 7 whatever port. So essentially, our BTEdit app is spinning up a web server locally, and on page load, we're making just a basic ping request to see if it's running. And that's what determines whether that icon or that text at the top that we saw was being displayed. So Seamless Edit is running if we get a actual response back from that local server. Otherwise, we're going to display the link to install. If they already have it installed and it's just not running, the setup exe will realize that and just run the application. But yeah, so that's kind of the little magic trick, I guess, that we've used. So if we click Edit Locally in here, what we're doing is building up some kind of view model of the document information, the ID probably being the most important part, as well as the path that it can be downloaded at. And then we're also passing along some authentication info, so the session ID and user ID that our BTEdit app will be using to make service calls up to our web API services to actually download and re-upload the files. Then from there, we're just posting this data. Make sure that. And here we see the same request handler. First one is kind of another dummy request, and then we're actually handling a request that has file information here. So then we are deserializing. And in here, we're actually going to open the file. So we essentially spin up a wrapper around a process for each file. And here we're checking if we already have a process open that has this file open. If we do, go ahead and just move it to the foreground and alert the user that it's already open. Otherwise, we're going to create a new file worker, and then we'll go and download that file. And within this open file, oh, excuse me, that was. What we're doing is we keep a local cache. I mean, we don't need to get too much into that, but if it's already been downloaded and it's not been updated, we'll just take it from the local cache. Otherwise, I mentioned this earlier, we're going to spin up a directory watcher for that file directory. This is after we download the file, and then get the registered application for that file type. So this is kind of one of the pain points. You can see we've got some calls to native methods here to try to determine what application we should use to run this program. And it's not perfect. I'll mention a little bit later that there's problems if the user doesn't have that file type associated with an application. We kind of lose our handle on the process, and from there it kind of spins out of control. And I mean, we do our best to just let the user know that they're not going to be able to edit this within BTEdit. But as we move along here, we go ahead and start the process. We have some configuration for getting arguments for specific editors. Right now, it's just configuration for like Word and Excel. But as we build this up, there will probably be more application-specific flags that we have to set to be able to support different applications. Then we go ahead and we start the process, and there we try and grab a handle on when the editor closes. So, I mean, you guys saw out here in the browser, it hasn't happened yet, but we want to display that icon, show the users that it's being edited, and then we also want to take it away when it's done being edited, which is another tough thing. You know, if the application completely crashes, there's not really a good way to necessarily grab that it's closed, but I think we've done the best we can there to try and make sure that when the application closes, all the other users are alerted that this user is no longer editing. So, let's see. Let's go ahead and click through there. Now it's open. And inside of BTEdit, we're going to send a message up to our SignalR server saying that the file is open. And if I have my breakpoints set correctly, well, this one, I think I missed this, but when the file is first opened, it's going to send a message that tells our SignalR server that this user is editing this document, and it runs through this code to add it to a group, and groups are kind of built into SignalR, and we also keep a custom list just in memory at this point of the document user list association, and then some information on whether that file has been edited since these users have opened it. And that's how we kind of handle the conflicting edit sort of thing. I'll show that to you guys as well. Make sure these are on. But we do some calls to mark everyone else in the group as dirty once this file has been uploaded. We go ahead and continue on that. Make sure we're not sitting on, okay, we are. Continue here. Okay, so here's where it joins the group. I didn't miss it. And since this is the first user, it's going to go ahead and add that group and then broadcast that the file is open. So we've now got it open. And if we make a change, BTEdit is going to re-upload that file. And then we're going to go through some other SignalR stuff to alert users that that's happening. This is hitting our SignalR server, asking if the upload is clean. And so that's some code on the web API side. We're actually checking, we're doing some checking to see if other people have edited. If they have, we're going to send back file is dirty response and not actually save it. And that's how the user will know that they need to make a decision whether to stomp over this person's changes or to save it off to a separate location and maybe work it out amongst themselves. But you can see this to-do here. We're going to build in some other stuff where if they choose to overwrite that user's copy, it's timed out, then we'll actually email the older version to the previous editor so that they at least have their changes and be able to potentially merge them at a later date. So as I keep going here, looks like we're done. And so that's saved. And So you can still see this. Eventually, we're going to have the modified date updating. The link actually changes to the document. So I think that's what we saw in that first error was I was using a bad link. But eventually, SignalR is going to handle updating everything on that row as the users change them in real time. So it's kind of neat. And then as we close this, the BTEdit app is going to broadcast that the file is closed, and it's going to wrap up that process, close stuff out, put it in our local cache, and then encrypt it for a minimum level of security. So that's kind of the base case. The user also leaves their group within the SignalR status list once they've closed that, so they're no longer being marked as dirty or being updated about that file. Does anybody have questions? Yes, Fidel?
Since we're in a load balance environment and SignalR doesn't work, we will work in a load balance environment, how do you keep track of all of these messages coming from different servers?
Right, it's an excellent question. So what we're doing is we've separated the SignalR stuff, and we're actually hosting that separately. Excuse me, a little parched. So everything is communicating with one server that's hosted apart from our app servers. I will show a little bit later. You can have SignalR hosted on your load balance servers using something they call Backplane. I'll give a little demo of how that would work. There's like 3 different providers for that. So there is options for that, and basically SignalR passes through their messages to the Backplane, which then communicates to all the other servers that this message has happened and been sent to this user or whatever it does. So there are ways. I'll kind of show you guys a little bit later. Yeah. Anybody? Yeah.
Curious, did you guys look into like WebDAV integration with Office products, and was that why you didn't go with that solution?
Yeah, we did look at WebDAV, and there are some neat things that you can do with that, but we felt it was, I mean, it's been a few months now, but I think there were some limitations. We wanted to actually end up supporting almost any file type. We want to be able to support the builder who saves his CAD drawings up in our Buildertrend documents and wants to edit them, and he has a CAD editor on his machine. So, WebDAV may or may not support that if it's Office integrated. WebDAV also, I mean, it supported file locking, so it was something we looked into as well. But like I said before, we went a different route with that. And I think just doing it our way maybe provided a little more customization. But I mean, I'm not super familiar with all the WebDAV research that we did.
On your locking message, is it just saying if the file's locked, or does it actually tell you who has it locked?
I think right now it just says that another user has it locked, but it's certainly something we could extend to having the username on there.
So it looks like for your SignalR, you're passing the information you need for that.
Yeah, we are passing the user ID in some cases. So, I mean, this is just kind of a demo application. But yeah, there's no reason we couldn't identify the user that has edited it. So you could go talk to them directly about what happened. Got some, oh yeah. Hey.
I'll be passing out T-shirts to anyone who asks a question.
I was just gonna think.
Go ahead.
Did you look at versioning at all, like saving versions of the documents?
Yes. I think Dropbox might do that, or BoxEdit might do it as well. That's how they do conflict resolution. They're just saving it as file name underscore one. What's that?
Both do that.
They both do that? Yeah. So, I mean, we didn't really like that. Felt it kind of just cluttered up the Documents tab. And we feel like with the real-time notifications that we have, it does a pretty good job of allowing the users to be smart about not overwriting other people's stuff. So that's just the direction we took, whether it's right or wrong.
What would be the unique feature compared to like a OneDrive?
So I guess I'm not familiar with what OneDrive does.
Well, basically it comes with all Windows operating system. You can just open your local folder and make.
So it's like Dropbox. Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't provide the web integration that we wanted, and it's within the Buildertrend system as well. So we wanted kind of I mean, it could be white labeled, the stuff that we've done, and put in anywhere. Just hook into your authentication system. This just works specifically on the Buildertrend Docs tab and integrates. Our customers are worried about security, so it's something where they're downloading something from Buildertrend, they're within the Buildertrend web application. It's all kind of a closed loop.
Yeah, a big requirement for us is I've actually been talking to Microsoft a little bit about integrating with their Office 365. But a big requirement for us is that we have 500,000 users, and there's 10,000 different clients that we have. And some of those clients have hundreds of users. If they shared it on their OneDrive account, then anyone they shared with could see any of their files. So a big requirement for us is to make sure that if I choose through Buildertrend to share this file with you and that file with Rich, when Rich goes to look at his file, he better not see this file and vice versa. So we have a very heavily permissions-based user or document folder structure in there between our builders, their own internal employees, the subcontractors who work with them, and then the homeowners who are buying the products. So they're based on those permissions. We needed to come up with a solution where we chose who got to see it, and we just didn't share everything.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is the document properties for a specific document. You can see that you have the fine-grained control to share with each specific subcontractor or user. You know, if I just wanted to share it with Gilbert Wolf here, I would be able to do that. And then within the system, you're basically keeping the permissions in a closed loop there. So.
That application that has the web server that's listening, is that a new service or a regular desktop app? When does that fire up? Like on start or?
Yeah, it fires up on App Start, and it's just a Windows application essentially that's formless. So it runs strictly in the taskbar. And I mean, I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you, but you know, we have some ability to generate Windows forms with maybe some settings. This is pretty rudimentary, but giving the user the ability to set notifications and the limit on their cache. But really, it's meant as more of a UI-less sort of background. Most of our users will never even really know that it's there.
So speaking of the security, is this cached area, is it encrypted or it's just whatever Windows is using?
So it's put into the user's folder, first of all, in their app data or whatever. So if you have your permissions set up correctly on the computer for different users, that'll partially secure it. And then we're also moving the file once they're done editing into a different folder, so the users can't go into Word and look at the recent docs and access it from there. And then we're also doing some basic encryption so that your average user couldn't access the file even if they found it on the file system.
Are you using the application-based security and encryption or your own encryption?
I think we're using some kind of...
Basically, if it's Excel, is it using the built-in Excel?
Oh,
encryption?
no. It's using a .NET library, I think, some kind of encryption there. I'm not real sure on the exact stuff there.
So if you're in, you know, the end construction company or whoever, what security, do they have any concerns of you downloading an app onto their
Sure.
And how did you address that?
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, we haven't shown this to many customers yet. I'm sure there will be a lot of concerns. Some of the things we've done to alleviate that are that it's a link on our site. When you click it and you hit the setup exe, it's telling you it's from Buildertrend Solutions. It's signed. You know, before we added the certificate, it had a bunch of hoops you had to jump through where it would download, you'd have to say keep, then your antivirus would run and say it, you know, put it somewhere unsafe location. So I think signing it has helped a lot. It just shows, at least shows you the name Buildertrend on it.
But at the end of the day, too, our clients, they're blue-collar guys, and this is just added functionality for them. They can still download a document, find it, modify it, hit save, and re-upload if they choose to. We just have people banging on the door for Dropbox-like functionality with the permissions built in. Dropbox doesn't work for their business. They want to use the permissions we built, and they're asking for this. So a lot of those guys aren't going to care about that sort of thing. They're going to want this. And if they are concerned with security, just do it the old way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was kind of like one of the questions asked up here. But yeah, we have, I think, the data being passed around to be able to do that. We just maybe aren't at this point actually specifying which user is editing. But it's phase 2 sort of thing. We could certainly add that user's name specifically. Yeah, I mean, that'd be awesome. Yeah, it's, I mean, we have several third-party integrations that we do now, and I mean, doing something like that would be pretty neat, yeah, but definitely nice to have for us at this point, yeah.
What about one user that has multiple roles, and maybe they have multiple roles at different job sites? Have the ability to access their files based upon what role they have and what job sites they're at?
Yeah, I mean, the permissions for these files, I mean, the files are job site specific. On the left there is our job picker. Right now I have it filtered to just one job, but you would be going through that list to change job site context. So then each file is based on that job and which users are able to view that job and kind of their role on that job. So.
Follow-up then, I forgot which job sites I'm at. Does the file tell me specifically so that I know you're here, or is it too general enough based on
Can you re-explain the question? You forgot what job site you're at?
Yeah, you forgot what job site you're at. You know, pick up a document or something at one particular job site, and you forgot that, oh, I forgot I was there. Does the file indicate where you're at? What document is it you're looking at?
It's all stored here, so it's built into our solution. You can see through the jobs.
Yeah, this user only has one job.
So
If you go to my remote desktop, though, it will have the Ricky2 account, I think, the Chrome on the right. And yeah, remove that.
this menu here shows all your jobs. So if you're on a document, you're going to be able to see exactly what job you're on. So if I'm looking at document abc.pdf, I'll be able to see I'm on the .NET users group job. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? We also have mobile apps for people in the field. So if they do get lost or forget where they're at, through GPS, it'll show them.
Yeah, and ideally the document will have some sort of context as to what job you're on as well. So, yeah. Use the what? Oh, yeah, I mean, that was a decision by our student team. I mean, I'm not familiar with what you're.
So Microsoft ships catching a lot of lots. So if you want to run a mobile website, you can do that. And you just use the same connection with the server, but since you're using Signal,
Yeah, probably just ignorance. So, and I mean, this has worked pretty well for us, but it's certainly something to look
What's the
into.
benefit of doing that versus single line?
Good to know.
Speaking of your, the mobile app, does a mobile app link into this or work with this, or how does that coordinate with it? What
So
functionalities do you have with it?
the mobile app is kind of based on the platform you're on. I don't remember which, but one of them has some kind of office editing capability.
Android out of the box has it. With the Apple app or iOS app, you have to go into the document itself and say choose edit with builder trend, because Apple doesn't let you do that yet. But our native team is very excited when Apple does open that up.
Yeah, and it's all reading, the same stuff. The services that BT Edit are using are essentially the same as the mobile app, so they all kind of go through the same funnel.
Have you guys had any problems with large file sizes and bandwidth?
I'm sure we will. I mean, our builders use this tab for all sorts of different things, and I was talking with Adam before the presentation about that very concern, potentially being able to somehow partially upload, files or something. I have no idea how that would work, but yeah, I'm sure it'll happen.
Right now, we have a videos feature in our program where we allow them to take a 5-minute HD video. We compress it, and we allow them to upload that. We have not had any issues with that. So I'm not too worried about the document sizes yet.
Bad files.
Yeah. Yeah, 3D modeling files, I'm sure would.
300 baud.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Let's see. Anybody else before I go on?
Kind of asked a little bit earlier what document formats are you supporting? So it's whatever the customer has. So if they're running an again.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the goal. For this demo, it's basically Word and Excel, I think, is what we're supporting right now. But ideally, we could listen to our customer feedback, gather which file types would be the biggest benefit to our whole customer base, and then continue implementing on a case-by-case basis.
Would you choose to limit the clients to certain formats and then expand based on the requests, but you control it? Is that how you
Yeah,
do it?
yeah. Based on demand. I mean, that's how we work a lot of times with our development, so. Cool. Say that again? Yeah. I don't think I'm following. I don't think I caught some of that. I'm sorry.
Microsoft Windows, that operating system is built on comma.
Yeah.
Everything in Windows is a comma. There's a comma that would actually tell you this is the file extension, this is the default program that's being written. So if you use that, it doesn't matter what version of Windows you have, as long as it has that comma. It's pretty solid.
Right.
So you guys right now, like, there's a Windows registry.
Oh, okay.
No kind of crap sheet gets 50% error.
Yeah.
So if you use that comma, you use that directly, you get the correct. And then you don't care about how to do it. Registry.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that. Appreciate the tip.
Yeah. That's good to know. That's actually kind of what I was going to show next was when a file type is unknown. Was there any other questions? Let's go ahead and disable this guy. So when I'm editing a 3DM file, some kind of 3D modeling file, which we support for upload apparently, but will not currently support for BT Edit, or at least not on my machine. Disable all these breakpoints. It'll tell you that it doesn't have an associated application and could not be opened with this BT Edit app. You want to save it to a different location and find a way to edit it. This is kind of one of the gotchas that the team was running into. If we let the Windows default dialog where it asks you to pick a file or a program to use to edit open, it'll kind of lose our handle on the process, and from there we're kind of out of luck. So we have to interrupt it and bring up our own dialog and basically tell them that you need to save this and figure it out yourself because we can't help you. So we'll go ahead and cancel that. The last demo I was going to do was conflicting edits. So let's see. If I open the file over here, let's go ahead and refresh this guy. And then I will open him over here as well. And we are debugging. Turn these guys off. Okay, so you can see someone's editing, but I want to go in there and make a change anyway. Disable these guys. So now we've got it open. This guy comes in here, saves. And over here, we're going to check if it's clean. It should be at this point. It'll say yes. So we'll go through, and then we're going to mark all the others as dirty. So everyone else in this group for the document ID, we're going to say you're now editing a dirty file. Take that how you will. So change this and skip through that. And as we come through here, the upload is clean is now false. It makes sense. And we get this dialog. It does not contain the new changes from another user. Would you like to overwrite the copy? If you don't, press no, and then you can do a save as, potentially save your document to another location. So this at least provides the user with a decision point about what they're doing. And then, like I mentioned earlier, if they do choose yes, our plan is to eventually take the document currently on the server and email that out to the previous editor so that they won't lose their changes completely, even if this user decides to stomp over them. So that's kind of our rudimentary conflict resolution. We had discussions about downloading the current version on the server and potentially doing some merging, but you get into a lot of problems there with the different file types and how all that would even work. It's very complicated, at least in theory. So this is a pretty simple solution that'll make sense to people, we think, and hopefully prevent 95% of the issues that we see. So that's pretty much all the functionality. If we go back here, do you guys have any other questions about those two quick edge cases that I showed you? Figure out how to, oh, cool. Well, it might take several minutes, guys, so get comfortable.
Is this for Windows only?
Currently, yeah.
Only if you have a Mac version of?
Yeah, our team is looking at a Mac version right now that they've kind of wrapped up the base functionality on Windows. But our Mac users will still be able to take advantage of some of the browser-based functionality, seeing who's editing the files. But yeah, they just won't be able to use the native editing tool. So a few of the pain points that we've gone through in this development process, I've kind of talked about some of these. Document editor quirks, like what happens when you don't have a mapped extension type, or let's see, we got some bookmarks here. The different arguments you need for each editor. I mean, currently we're building up a list in a configuration file of the process name and then specific arguments that we need for those editors, and that's kind of why I said it'll be kind of like a case-by-case basis of which file types we support. Some may not need arguments, but like Word, you have to add that W to make sure that it opens in its own process, I think. Otherwise, it'll all be one process, and our app can't keep track of two files being edited at once if you were in that situation. Then, yeah, kind of what I talked about already with the Get Registered application. And as this gentleman in the back mentioned, there must be a better way to do this.
Question about
Yeah.
your configuration file. Are you not worrying about shell injection? Potentially I can inject anything into that argument or whatever to get a separate shell command executed.
Sure, but these settings are not.
Is it on your server or is it on the client's machine?
It'll be on the client machine.
Yeah,
So,
that's why.
yeah, I guess someone could get a hold of this and potentially change it and execute something on their own machine.
Yeah, they'd only be corrupting their own documents or their own machines, so I'm not sure what they'd have to gain out of that, because they don't have access to anyone else's files, so it's not a huge concern since it's on their own machine.
Yeah, I mean, if someone didn't have their security set up per user on the machine, I mean, certainly there's some sort of case where there's something bad could happen by executing shell commands that you don't want to execute or you don't know you're executing. So that's, yeah, certainly something to keep in mind as a concern. Yeah, so let's see if this crashes on me again. Watching for process exit, I kind of talked about that. But there's several different cases where the app, our BT Edit app, will lose its handle on the process without running through the kind of shutdown dispose code, and that leaves us in a bad state. So we've been working through those as they come along, and I think we've done a pretty good job of wrapping most of those up, but that was a significant amount of development effort, I'd say, and research on how to do that.
So you eventually find how to lock after a certain amount of time?
Yeah, well, like I said, we don't ever lock the file, but
The little icon
Yeah, like if the user walked away from their desk, I think eventually we'd want to time out, yeah, the browser icon as well as any sort of subscriptions that user has based on that file. Click once. So I kind of skipped over this, but if you guys aren't familiar with Click Once, it's worked pretty well for us for this app. On Windows apps, there was a question earlier about what this was. It's just marked as output type Windows application. So then we get this Publish tab. And from here, you can mark where you want to publish the code to, and then where the user is going to install it from as well. And you can also set up, what files are coming with, the prereqs, and you can determine how you want those bundled, whether you want them to download from Microsoft or wherever, or you can keep them with your app or a separate location. Then also how your application is going to update. We have it set to update before the app starts, but ideally our app never closes, so I'll show you how we do the auto updating as well, which was another kind of pain point for us. Then you've got some options about the deployment, probably not interesting, and you can automatically increment the version, and you can publish right from here. So each time there's a new version, our app will be checking for that and will alert the user that there's a new version if they're in a file editing. So I'll go ahead and show you that. Redo this. So we've got this file open, and so when our app starts, we start a timer that basically every so often it goes and checks for this current deployment.check for detailed update, which is a framework function that digs into the Click Once deployment and checks against the server URL where it was downloaded, sees if there's an update available, and then what we're doing is there's no built-in way to restart this Windows app and update. So we are checking for a shortcut to the app and getting that shortcut and then updating and restarting, kind of like a juggling act. There's quite a few like Stack Overflow posts and stuff about this. But yeah, we're like looking in the start menu or the desktop for a shortcut. And then if it exists, we're going to do this restart flow where if there's no files open, we're just going to restart the app. We go there and create a new task that essentially executes that shortcut, which will then, once the app restarts, will update based on our settings that I showed you in the project. So when the app restarts, it'll check for an update and download it automatically. Now, if the user has it open, I'll show you. We give them kind of a decision point. We'll go ahead and publish now. No, we want to go. No, I want it to be. No, I want it to be 7. You're supposed to automatically increment that. I'll do it for you this time. Okay, so you updated, and hopefully, we'll sit here and wait a little bit, but I guess I can go back to my, oh, there we go. So the user gets an alert, says there's an update available, and this is only if they are actively within a file editing. So you'll click OK to restart, or you can click Remind Me Later and snooze it for, however long, just like those wonderful Windows Update dialogues that you used to get all the time.
Upgrade to Windows 10.
Yeah, yeah. You select 4 hours, and then it feel like 10 minutes later you're seeing it again. So if we just go ahead and hit OK. Oh yes, I have my notes to close all the open files before you hit OK. Because earlier today I was just hitting OK and thought it was a bug. It's like, what's going on here? So it is thinking, and it should bring up the click once dialog at some point. Well, you don't have to sit around and wait for it. But anyway, that auto upgrade is not as obvious as you'd think it would be. I mean, Click Once does a good job of updating, but their current workflow is based more on apps that you close when you're done with them, not something that's running in the background at all times. Cross-origin resource sharing, we were actually working on something related to this today, not related to this project, but seems to be a pain no matter when you come across it. But the way we have it set up in test and probably in our production environment is we'll have a subdomain for SignalR requests that will need to accept requests from a different subdomain. So just getting that stuff sorted out and still secure is always a pain, especially when you're not real familiar with it. Like, I mean, I have some familiarity, but not enough, obviously. And then sharing SignalR group state across servers. I showed you that we have kind of just a static list in memory of our current state of document editing, but really, if we have to restart the app pool, that goes away and immediately like ruins any state that we have. So there's some articles out there about persisting this type of stuff to the database, which would be pretty simple and eventually maybe something we want to do. But at this point, it's really not like mission critical to us that that stuff stays in sync if we ever had to restart the app for whatever reason. So I'm not too worried about it. As far as extending the solution, you can do the group membership in the DB, which kind of relates to what I was talking about, and then the backplane for scale out. This is kind of interesting, where if you have a bunch of SignalR apps, they'll communicate with the backplane and keep everything in sync across all of your app servers. And you can use the Azure Service Bus. There's a Redis provider and a SQL Server provider. I went ahead and implemented it on my local, and it's really just like a NuGet package and creates a database with a few tables that they tell you to never look at or edit or do anything with. So, but yeah, I mean, basically it just keeps track of messages and encoded payloads and transfers those across servers. So we created just a separate hosted app for simplicity, but I think this would really be pretty simple as well. In our app, it was really a matter of installing the NuGet package and then putting one line of code to use SQL Server and give it the connection string. So simple enough to do it that way as well. Let's see. I think I'm almost done here. Obviously, the Mac app, we mentioned that. And then we have some research going on push notifications. Maybe some of you are familiar with the push API for browsers. It's kind of a new standard that's being developed, pretty early stage. We're going to be using it for like toast notifications in browser to alert a user if they have a new, say, change order or something like that in real time. And these are all hosted by the different browser providers. So, you know, the server side would be hosted by Mozilla or Chrome, so that reduces the load on your servers and simplifies deployment, I suppose. But they've got a basic chat server app demo here. So you could see how that would extend to some of the SignalR stuff that we demoed today. And it's definitely something we'll be keeping an eye on. Not all browsers support this. Not all of them support like ad hoc data in the messages, so you couldn't necessarily update the DOM or do whatever you wanted with it in all browsers. But it's like every week there's some work being done on this, so definitely something to keep an eye on. That's it. Any other questions? Yeah.
You mentioned that plugins are going away. Is there a possibility that the browser will go away and client apps would be the next way?
I guess. I mean, they're building like OSs based on browsers now, right? So it seems like it's going the other direction. What's that?
I think it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
OS is based on browsers.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. Yeah, I suppose.
So it'd
I
be
don't
just
really have an
client
answer.
server as opposed to client browser server, browser something else.
Yeah, I
We
think
always want to go through the browser.
browsers will continue to transform into something maybe we don't expect them to be in the future. Yeah, I mean, things change quick, so it's hard to say. Anybody else? T-shirts?
Guys, don't feel bad if you didn't ask a question. We have plenty of T-shirts, so you can come grab them after. Just come find me.
All right, that's all I got.
And if you do have questions for Rich after, he'll be sticking around. You can talk to anybody in these back couple tables. If you're curious about Builder Trend, Michaela's still here. If you're curious about a job, come find her. And hats off to Rich, great presentation.
Thank you, guys.